Welcome back to the program. We're glad you've stayed with us. Now, Kenya is set to host the 4th National Green Growth Conference and exhibition next month. That is the 12th and 13th of July. Now, this is yet another opportunity for everyone keen on sustainable growth to contribute to the goal of promoting a greener Kenya. Now, the country is increasingly keen in green initiatives in key impact sectors of agriculture, energy, manufacturing, as well as transport. Questions are, however, being raised over the double speak by Kenyan authorities who are propagating green economy solutions, but at the same time initiating a $2 billion coal project to be financed through debt. To help us understand the importance of green investment, not just in Kenya, but the rest of the continent, I'm now joined by Mithika Mwenda, who is the Executive Director, Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, and Peter Odhengo, who is the Climate Finance Policy Advisor at the National Treasury right in Kenya. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the program. Now, Mithika, let me begin with you. First of all, before even we discuss about the coal project that is taking place in Kenya, let's talk about the green economy or the green investment itself. This is a term not very familiar. Most people are not familiar with these terms. Can you perhaps break it down for us?
Yeah, thank you very much. The green economy is a concept which has emerged out of global conversations about the mode of production and consumption, which have brought some of the challenges which we are seeing in terms of pollution, climate change, plastics, and all those environmental challenges we are experiencing now. And this is now the realization that we need a paradigm shift. Mm-hmm. How do we now grow? How do we balance between the growth, that is sustainable development, and environmental conservation? So that is the question. Mm-hmm. And you know, like the issue of climate change is one of the most topical issues across the globe now. Mm-hmm. Because now the question is, how did we reach where we are now? Mm-hmm. It's a broader conversation about who has caused the problem of climate change. Yes. And of course, according to the UN Climate Change Convention, is that this problem was caused during the industrial revolution by industrialized countries. And that is actually the problem which we are experiencing today. Mm-hmm. So the question is, here we are, we also want to develop in developing countries, but now, are we going to develop with the mode of production and consumption which brought these problems which we have now? Mm-hmm. So that is the paradigm shift we are talking about. And that is what has brought about the conversations around green economy, that we have to balance between nature, that acknowledge that the carrying capacity of the planet has exceeded the limit. And really, we have to think about the future, because we have rented this world, or this planet, for the future generation. So all these are the conversations which are going around. Mm-hmm. That one, we have to develop. Number two, we have also to preserve the health of the planet.
I understand this is a very important conversation. And Peter, I think Kenya has already launched its own green economy strategy. So where is Kenya with regards to the implementation process? Where are we so far?
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Kenya has been a leader in transforming and coming up with policy and strategies that set the pace for the realization of the broader agenda of the green growth and green economy, as just has been said by Mithika. The strategy was finalized and launched in 2016, and it is now what is guiding the type of the development that we want to see in the short term and in the long term. And indeed, the green economy, as just has been mentioned, is a two-pronged approach. There is the so-called the software, the mindset where we change how we consume, and also the technology and the enabling environments which is delivering that product. But the key delivery here is how the people themselves consume, produce, and transform the raw material into a usable, environmentally friendly product. The strategy gives a very clear direction, a roadmap, resources required to transform the same, the human skills that we will need in the short, medium, and long term, and also the financial resources that is required to deliver that green current and future.
Yes, Peter, we're going to talk about the financial aspect shortly, but Mithika, and I'd like Peter to react to this as well later, but let me begin with Mithika first. And Mithika, Peter has outlined very well that Kenya has already launched its green economy strategy, and right now we are in the implementation phase. But at the same time, this is a country that is also still going on with its coal ambition, a plant that is being developed in Lamu, a very important place in Kenya when it comes to matters environment. Are we seeing some sort of a double speak from the government here?
Actually, that is the contradiction which we see as the civil society, because at global stage, we are branding ourselves as pioneers of one of the most ambitious climate change law in the world and in Africa. Yet, when we are doing that, we are the ones now who are promoting now the coal, oil. So it's a contradiction. And what we really need to see is that a country which moves. Because now it is no longer actually viable in very near future that even that coal which we are investing in is going even to make any economic sense. Kenya, as we speak now, is a country which has got vast resources in terms of renewables, geothermal. We are number 1 in Africa in geothermal exploitation and resources. We are number 9 in the world. So we are doing very well. So the question is, why are we obsessed with exploration of oil? Why are we obsessed with coal in Lamu and whatever? Whereas we know not only even the economy sense, but even the health implication of coal.
Yes.
So I think, so the question here is, I think what we need to do, we really need a national discourse on the kind of energy which we use, including even the nuclear and so forth. If Germany, which does not enjoy the kind of sun, we can invest so massively in solar, what about us? So I think it is the issue of policy which Peter is talking about. And the question is, we have policies. Do we put those policies into practice really? Or we just have policies just for the sake of it?
I think you've raised very important questions there. Now, Peter, Mithika is talking about, Kenya has geothermal, we have other sources of green energy, but why is the government so keen on the coal project?
I think what we need to look at here is that globally the development is balanced based on the types of the energy sources that you are using. Recently, and over the last 5 years, you have seen the serious discussion about the Gibe 1, 2, 3, 4 hydro in Ethiopia. And over the last 20 years, the development of those mega dams had been condemned globally. You can remember in China and etc. So what we need to look in terms of where we want to go, there is the cost of how to deliver the products. And energy is one of the key input in a production system, which if it is expensive, then definitely your products and your goods and services that you are offering will not be competitive. What we need to understand is that the technology has already been advanced, and that even in areas where there used to be what we call the dirty coal, there is now what we call the coal gasification. And there are now other technologies that are reducing the emission to a mere minimum, bare minimum. So what we need to discuss here, what are the types of the technology that is going to be deployed? Secondly, we need to know also that geothermal, yes, we have been the leader, and we are soon going to be leading in this. But these are intensive infrastructure development that takes 5 years, 6 years from the feasibility study to the deployment. So it is an intervention, it is a transition, it is the interface that needs to be looked. And it is also we need to look at the transition in terms of our competitiveness within the COMESA, within the East African region, within the ECOWAS. All along has to be put into the perspective and really discuss in a sober way where are we? What type of the technology? Where is it done? I know in Japan they are still using coal. I know in Germany it is a great debate.
But that doesn't make it right, right?
Oh, nobody says it is right. Even the solar is...
Now
yes.
let me engage Mithika. You've had the point of view there from Peter. Now, how can the government strike the balance here in order to have the so-called sustainable, economy? Because there's the urge for governments to grow economically, but at the same time, there's need to protect the environment. So how can the government strike the balance here? And is there anything called clean coal?
I think that's actually a very difficult question. We acknowledge that there must be that balance. But moving into the future, even if we have Germany using coal, even if we have China using coal, just recently, President Trump, when he was campaigning, he was talking about how Obama destroying the coal industry and that he would revive them. But now when he became the president, he has not been able to return the coal because there is no appetite in investment in coal in U.S. and elsewhere in the world because now it doesn't make, it's becoming more obsolete because now we have excellent technology in renewables, and the renewables are becoming more cheaper and cheaper. There are more incentives in this. So this is the future. And that's what we are saying, and we are telling the government, is that looking into the future, we don't see the future of coal. And actually, that's the reality. The companies which you are seeing from China and elsewhere coming to invest is because out of the pressure of pollution, for instance, in China, but they want to make business, so they transfer that pollution to Africa, and that's the reality.
So there's nothing like clean coal that exists, right?
We don't believe that there is those are like the greenwashing which we talk about, because nobody want to actually bite the bullet. They talk about green coal and whatever. I think there is the solution. But at Kenya level, what we need to do is we cannot say we just instantly go renewables. I think that is not going to make sense, yet we need to, but the issue is how do we balance this? And actually the issue of energy mix that now comes into practice. But the question is, and the answer here is, we need really that conversation, and we need to be very honest with ourselves that we have to balance between the preservation of nature, environmental conservation, and of course, development. That's a reality.
Well said, Mithika. And Peter, of course, governments, not just Kenyan government, they always talk about the need to conserve environment. They need to go green. Of course, Kenya has already launched its own environmental strategy that we've talked about the green economy strategy. So in terms of budget, I understand Kenya has just tabled its budget a few days ago, not just Kenya, but across the East African community. Are these governments putting money where the mouth is?
Definitely, you have to go deeper and look at the key items within those budgets and then see where they're taking, where the resources are being put. But one of the things that we definitely have to look at is that the balance that we are talking about, it is a balance in terms of the ecosystem. It is in the balance in terms of how we view where we want to go with our development. It is a balance in terms of resources from within and outside. And one thing I want to put clearly here is that it is, I'm not talking on behalf of the government, but it is known that most of these things and these investments is a partnership where the private sector are also involved, a partnership where the policymakers are also engaged, a partnership where the civil society and the community themselves are party to that, as Mithika alluded. That is the development that is delivering for the people. We have to look at all this in terms of the holistic approach and the way we are going. The green economy, I am a green man. the Greening Kenya and all those started 10 or 15 years ago. Resources have been factored in it. Incentives have been given. Even if you look at the recent one, there are a lot of those incentives that are given to spur this economic growth that is transformative in terms of domestic resources, in terms of international resources, and in terms of innovative financial mechanisms that are also put in place. Because number one, if you look globally and if you go through the Paris Climate Agreement, which was enacted in 2015, for us to transform to a green economy scenario, there is need for about $4 trillion per year for the 154 countries that are supposed to change, including the Americans themselves. That is
that's a lot of money.
A lot of money that cannot be put on the government and the taxpayers alone.
Yes.
It is a collective responsibility. That is where there is need for balance in terms of cost-effective benefits, which must be analyzed. There must be capacity from the people within themselves. And of course the communities.
It's important to mention that the government still has a major role to play in this. Now, Mithika, this brings to the fore another question. Is not just Kenyan government, but are African governments offering enough support to conservation efforts across this continent?
These are debatable question. We work with governments, both at African Union level and even at national government level. And the issue of climate change, addressing it and combating it, you cannot do it alone. The Kenyan government cannot do it alone. The Africa itself cannot do it alone. It's the issue of partnership, broader partnership. And that's why, actually, if you look at the Paris Agreement, it really promotes and encourages that. What we are doing, and actually I sit with Mr. Odengo here, is the advisor at the climate change unit at the Treasury. And so that now the issue of climate change and this green economy, balancing this is no longer about the Ministry of Environment, is no longer the science, meteorology, which we think about. It's a broader question of development. How do we, for instance, integrate this into all sectors of the economy, and particularly the Vision 2030? That's the most important thing, because when you see like the infrastructure we are talking about now, just talking about at Kenyan level and Nairobi State County, we keep blaming Sonko that he has caused the potholes and all those, without realizing that these are the problems which have been caused by what has been predicted by scientists. And so we need really to come with the very, very robust policies, but not just policies, but implementable policies. Because the problem, and this is what we have observed as a Pan-African platform tracking these things, is that we have a lot of policies here, both even at EAC level, both at even Kenyan level here. Kenya has got so many policies targeted on addressing climate change. But why then, every time we have droughts, we just ask for donations? Why, when we have floods like we had this crisis in Nairobi just recently, are just running with balls, borrowing for money, whereas we know that this will appear? So that level of preparedness, policy preparedness, is very important, and that's why we are working with government to try to build this as not only as civil society, but working at the multi-stakeholder level to ensure that we build our resilient economies, we build resilient communities and resilient people.
Well said, Mithika. Now, Peter, once again, let me take you back to the green economy strategy, a strategy that has been adopted by the Kenyan government. Is this kind of an initiative, there in other East African countries? And if it's not there, do you think there's need to have some sort of a concerted, regional effort to adopt this kind of a strategy?
Of course, yes, definitely. Kenya is leading in this, and from 2016 we have been having this one, and we have been implementing it. And there is a greater need for broader developing of such a similar strategy and policy within the East African community. And I think a number of initiatives are going up. The EAC has already come up with their climate climate change strategy within the region. They are working on the developing green projects within the EAC. Or even in COMESA is also leading strategically in terms of how to support the member countries in terms of how they can now develop bankable green projects and green investments that can now transform the region. Also, NEPAD is also very important. It is helping African countries to come up with measures and investment plans that will definitely transform the entire region, because one country cannot be at the top and the rest are at the bottom, because it is a holistic process, and that in order to avoid leakages from the borders, then we need a uniform kind of a system where a region transits uniformly in terms of how they deliver the product. For example, if we are having green products and creating green jobs here, and it is not there in Uganda, it is not there in Tanzania, nor even in Rwanda, then definitely there will be distortion from within and from outside. And as you are aware that the climate change issues and even environmental pollution knows no borders. So we might not be achieving much holistically within the region if we don't pull our brothers to work with us in this long journey. And I think it is time that we need to strengthen our regional structures, regional integration, and also regional policy perspective. The number of policies is a good thing. Go to America and go to EU. The number of tons of policies that the EU bloc, directives in terms of environment, in terms of investment, in terms of trade, are huge. Kenya being a young country, we still need more to remove the barriers. We still need to do more to bring in a greater and accelerate the gains that we have made in this region. And of course, a number of benchmarking. Kenya is on the front line. Countries are coming to benchmark with us on the little gains
well
we
said,
have done.
Peter, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that something needs to be done with that coal project in Lamu. Many thanks for your input. Peter Odhengo is a climate finance policy advisor at the National Treasury right in Kenya, and as well as Joseph Mithika Mwendo is the Executive Director, Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. Many thanks, gentlemen, for your input. And before we wrap up our show tonight, over to our images of the day. They come